Hey everybody, I wanted to do a tutorial for you about stenciling with royal icing. I get a lot of emails and questions about whether or not you have to have an airbrush to stencil, and you definitely don't. You can use royal icing to stencil, and these here are some examples of ones that I've done with royal icing. A couple things you want to think about when you're choosing a stencil to royalize with is, especially if you're just starting out, that something like this, which is this cookie done with the small dot stencil, same here, is a lot easier to work with than, for example, something like this quatrefoil, if you can see that, where it's a lot more open space and fine lines in between the open space. If you are just beginning, I definitely recommend starting out with something like this or this heart one, where the spaces are maybe smaller and there's some more definition between the spaces, so that way it's just easier to work with and you have less chance of the icing smudging behind the openings or smushing together if the openings are too close together. So but it's a great way to add a little bit of dimension, but you can see they're still pretty flat. If you wanted to write on top of this, you could. But you know, this is a lot easier than piping, and especially if you don't have a copy cake, but you really want everything to be perfect, you can do royalized stenciling. This is another example of using two stencils. I airbrushed the zebra and then did the girl with royal icing on top. So that's another route you can do. Great too if you don't have a copy cake again, but you want to have a silhouette. So a couple things to think about is the border of your cookie. If you have a stencil like this one where they're widely spaced, you can really control kind of where it hits the border and you don't have to worry about it flying off the edge. Something like this where the design is tighter and you're going to end up with it on the edge. You know, you can do your best to stay within the edge. Some people will make a mask to mask off the shape of the cookie so they don't have to worry about that. Or you can just ice it and then go back and clean up these little edges. And probably what I would do on this one maybe is just add a border to hide any of these little things if you don't want them showing up. So I'm going to set up and show you how to stencil with royal icing. Okay, so you're going to need some icing that is, I would call this stiff, or piping consistency, maybe even a little bit stiffer than piping consistency. But this is what's going to hold its shape best when you start to stencil. And I have an small offset spatula that is about the size of my cookie that I'm going to use to spread the icing across the stencil. And I am going to use magnets here as an extra set of hands, but I am only going to use 2 on the side, so that way my spatula doesn't get caught up in any more. But I'm going to use these to anchor it down. And then I'm just going to get some icing on my spatula, not a whole lot. Oops, sorry, just a little bit to start. And I'm going to plop it right down the middle and start to spread it out. So I've got the dot one, which, like I said, is an easier stencil to start with. I'm definitely not an expert on this, so, but I think this is an easy one to do for the beginning because, like I said, you don't have to worry as much about the border, and you can kind of control. So I'm kind of staying within the outline of the cookie and spreading the icing across. And what you can't see is that I'm scraping it off on my bowl, kind of like when you ice a cake. You add some icing down and then you scrape it off and you try to get a fairly even layer. So I've got my icing, I'd say about where I want it, And I'm going to try to take off a little more so I have it even and I don't have any scrape marks on my polka dots, if I can help it. And then all I need to do is pull it off. And there you have perfect polka dots. And like I said, if you don't like the way it hit the edge, just go in, clean this up a little bit. If you want to take one off, just take it off. And you're going to need to have your flood icing really dry on this. So you probably don't want to try to do this on the same day. Maybe ice it the day before. That way you have a firm icing to press down on. So there's some polka dots done. Super easy, really quick. It's good if you want to add dimension instead of doing wet on wet. Or if you decide later you want polka dots and you forgot to do wet on wet. But it's really cute.